Hi guys, this is Anya here from Roots of Aurora. I just figured I would talk a little bit about my most used and most cherished decks that I used in the summer months of June, July, and August. I went through my planner and looked at the decks that I plan to use and that I actually used this summer, and I noticed that there were, let's see, it is 6 decks that I've really been using a lot. And it's already September 15th today, so I mean, just like all autumn lovers, I have this feeling like when September arrives, September 1st, it's like, yay, it's autumn, autumn is coming. But this year, August was basically like autumn, almost. It was cold and rainy. And the beginning of September really, really felt like summer. It was really warm and sunny and, you know, all that summer stuff. So it really didn't feel like autumn started to arrive until I would say like 2 days ago. That's when I felt, or when I actually could smell autumn. Like if you're one of those people who loves autumn and you can smell autumn, you know exactly what I mean. So I figured as a goodbye to summer and hello to autumn, I would talk about my summer decks. I think I will make a video pretty soon about what decks I'm planning to use this autumn. I feel like with the seasonal deck lists, we can kind of go 2 ways. We can talk about the decks we have used, how we use them, how we like them, or we can choose to talk about the decks that we are going to use, how we're going to use them, and why we picked them, and so on. But one thing that immediately hit me as I was looking at my summer decks that I used the most was that they were it was extremely like tarot heavy. And at first it kind of surprised me, like, oh really, did I use tarot so much and not oracles? Like to the extent that I usually do, because I feel like I'm often 50-50. But it was really obvious that I had mostly used tarot when I looked in my journal. And saw the readings that I had journaled there. I journal basically all of my readings. Sometimes it's just like 2 paragraphs, other times it's 3 pages. But yeah, it got me thinking, like, why was I so drawn to tarot? And I could see that in, honestly, like the whole year has been kind of tarot heavy for me. And I think it is a little bit of a balance thing, because as the year started, I think my spirits lifted. Last year was extremely difficult and dark for me. I feel like I cried most months, to be honest. I had some things happen to me, and I'll probably talk about it later on, but I'm not like quite ready. But some things happened that just took a lot of energy from me, a lot of joy from me, and I also went to speak to a counselor a couple of times just to really process with someone who isn't, you know, a friend or partner or anything like that. Sometimes that's easier, and I feel like I can be more honest and not try to wrap things up in, you know, like nice words or anything. So yeah, last year I think that I was in need of softness and self-care, and trying to see the bright side of life, even though life had completely kicked my ass. So I was more drawn to oracles last year. I needed the softness that many, not all, but many oracles hold. And I was a little bit less into tarot because it was so hard for me to see cards like Death, Three of Swords, Ten of Swords. It just really brought up the grief and heaviness in me, and I didn't want to dig into that darkness all the time. I needed some breaks. But as this year started, I really felt my spirits lift a little bit. I found hope and joy again, even. And I didn't think that would be possible last year. Like, honestly, I was going through such a hard time that I felt like I am never going to be happy again. But as the year started, I really did somehow find my way back to joy and to enjoying life a little bit more. And I think that is why I started to go back to tarot a little bit. I wasn't as scared of seeing those, quote unquote harsh cards. I think that I had processed a lot of things, and I felt ready to look at the Death card again, to look at the Ten of Swords and see how it related to what had happened to me, but also how both Death and Ten of Swords can be, they are both darkness and light, just like every tarot card, in my opinion, holds darkness and light. They are cards that represent endings, but they are also cards that represent beginnings. And I was ready to look at that. So I think that this summer I've also been able to look at those aspects of life and my spirituality. So the only deck on this list that is an oracle is, as you can see, Alana Fairchild's Isis Oracle. This deck has been really, deep this summer for me. It has really stood out in a way where it's just been so spot on. It has really showed me how my feelings and my thoughts kind of how they balance each other and affect each other. I think that is one of the beautiful things with card work, that we can learn more about ourselves. We can ask ourselves, really, how are you feeling right now? What are you thinking? Why are you thinking and feeling that way? There is that self-explorative aspect of this deck that I really, really love. And also, as I think that many of us feel about this deck, it's very focused on self-empowerment and feminine power. I think that many of us, when we use this deck, if we are women or very in touch with the feminine side of ourselves, which I think all humans should be, when we get in touch with that, we can really feel the power of femininity, even though we live in a society that doesn't really cherish or value those parts of females. I think this deck really brings forth a feeling of taking control and taking action, coming from a space of believing in ourselves and believing in our gifts and talents and just who we are deep within, believing that we can achieve. what we want to achieve. We can't always. That's life. But we can. I think that when we go into the direction of telling ourselves that I can do this, and even if I fail, I've tried, and that is worth something. And I think this deck really at least helps me to believe in myself in that way. So it's been a really powerful spiritual deck, especially. When I say that it's been accurate, I'm not saying that it predicted this or that my summer. It was more in tune with what I was going through from a spiritual perspective and the messages that I needed from a spiritual perspective. So like I said, this list is tarot heavy, so let's move on to the tarot decks. I would say this is in no particular order. So here we have the Medicine Woman Tarot. This is like an old classic. It's been I don't know when it was released. I don't have the book here, unfortunately. But I think it's like late 80s or early 90s, perhaps. This deck is honestly not like, oh, I love the artwork, I want to have this on my walls. I don't. I think it's pretty, it's beautiful, it's cute, but it's not something I would normally go for. But I was gifted this deck a couple of years ago, and I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I do. And I have to say one thing, what I love the most about this deck is honestly the book. The guidebook written by Carol Bridges is her name. It is so good. I wish I had brought it now to show you like a little bit of it, but it is what it is. The book always makes me feel inspired to kind of embrace my own authenticity, I guess we could say. It really speaks of being true to yourself and working on being in touch with the energy and the environment around us. Carol drops some real truth bombs in the guidebook. So even though the images are like very soft and sweet and beautiful, the book is it's like pretty harsh. It really hits you with some truth bombs. So for me, like this summer, this has been my connect with nature deck. It's a deck that makes me want to go out, like no matter the season, but especially in summer, and just call in the energy of nature. So it's been what I've been connecting with more than I have in the past, I would say. And then we have a deck that I wouldn't see this as a summer deck just spontaneously. It has more of a almost like a winter vibe to me. I'm not sure why, because it's not like it's a like a dark and dull winter deck. What we would maybe associate with winter, like darkness of it's dark outside, the plants are all dying, there's a lot of death associated with winter, at least to me. And this deck, I don't know, for some reason it has a winter vibe to me. But despite that, I used it quite a lot this summer, and it's a pretty new deck in my collection. I can't remember when I got it. If it was this year or last year, I'm really not sure. But I haven't been able to connect with it that much until quite recently. And I think what I really loved about it was that did I even say that it's the Slavic Legends Tarot? I hope I said the title. I'm sorry, but now you know. It's the Slavic Legends Tarot. What I was going to say is, this deck has a way of telling you the truth that I really associate with Slavic people. And if you've followed me for a while, you do know that I have Polish parents. I grew up in Sweden. I was born here. But I have Polish parents. I've spent a lot of time in Poland, especially in childhood, not so much as an adult. But you know, being Polish is a big part of me, definitely. I speak Polish, not well, but I speak it. And I've lately I've been kind of longing to visit Poland for a weekend or a week or something like that. We'll see. But what I was going to say, I associate Slavic people with a kind of harsh way of telling the truth. Like, they don't really, wrap things up in a nice pink little box. They just blurt out the truth a lot of the time, and can really sound very harsh if you don't know that it's just a way of being. They don't mean to be rude. But if you come from a culture that is more, a little bit more soft and careful, you can be very shocked at the harsh truths that Slavic people share with others just openly without shame. I'm not like that. Since I grew up in Sweden, I can be way too much of a people pleaser. But this deck, in my opinion, really, really has that Slavic, harsh soul vibe to it. So it's been really enjoyable. I love this card. To read with this deck, because it's I think it's my only I do think it's my only Slavic deck. So it's a gem in my collection. It really is. Like, the quality is outstanding, and the connection to Slavic legends is really beautiful. I know that they released a PDF where I think they go through the major arcana cards, how they are connected to Slavic legends. I haven't had the time and energy to look at that yet, so I'm a bit behind, but I have it downloaded and I'm gonna look at it one day when I have time. And here we have a true summer deck. This is the Journey of the Sacred Bee Tarot. I don't see this talked about that much, but I love this deck. It's a collage deck. In a way, not something I would typically go for, but in this deck I love it. I think that this is just like the ultimate summer tarot deck. The colors are just very joyful, saturated, and fun. The imagery has, obviously a lot of summer vibes as well, considering that it is, it's a deck that obviously is very inspired by bees. So I think that it honestly, you can use it any time of the year, but for me, this one comes out in the summertime. I love this Empress card. That's when I connect with it the best, and this is just a stunning deck. Like when you do a bigger spread, like 5, 6, 7 cards or so, this deck looks amazing, and you immediately get this feeling for the vibe of the whole reading. So I love the bees, and I think it's such a stunning deck. It really is. It's a little bit underrated. Like, in my opinion, it should be talked about more in the community. Okay, only 2 decks to go, so I'm gonna be quick here. I don't want to make like too long videos. Here is an oldie but goodie, one of my favorite decks of all time. Kind of unexpected, because I did not love this deck, the Wild Unknown Tarot, when I first got it. I only got it because Urban Outfitters UK were having a sale, so this was really really cheap, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see what the fuss is about. I did not love this deck instantly. It took me a long time to connect with it, but I can say that now that I have a strong connection with it, it is, I can't imagine not having this deck in my collection. It is one of my favorite decks. When I was going through all of the hardship last year, this deck, it was not supportive. It was extremely honest, and it actually did predict those things that happened to me. Or I don't want to say predict. I want to say it had already happened, and this deck told me before I knew that it had happened, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, let's say that you've been to a job interview, and you go home and you're like, oh, I'm probably not going to get it. But what you don't know is that they have already decided that they are going to hire you. You know, that to me can be like, we think that the cards predicted something, but really they just showed us what had already happened. We just didn't know. So in a way, this deck can be extremely harsh and difficult for me to use, because it never shies away from telling me the hard truth. But you know, I'm always when I ask a question, I'm ready to get the answer. You know, if I don't want to know the answer, I don't ask. That's just me. But this is definitely my truth teller. And this summer, I was really trying to connect with it on a little bit of a softer level, and also also being open to this deck telling me the beautiful, loving lights and beautiful parts of life, so that I wouldn't be stuck in this feeling of, oh, this is a deck that only predicts hard, difficult, sad things. Because it's not. It's a very versatile deck that I think can be used for almost any questions. But, you know, for me, when I ask a question, I'm open to a harsh answer with this deck. I know it's not going to sugarcoat anything. So that's an oldie but goodie. And I'm gonna talk about the last deck that I used a lot this summer, and it's another oldie but goodie. And some of you may not be surprised that it is the Lumina Tarot by Inner Hue. This is my all-time favorite tarot deck. It really is. I've had it for quite many years now, and to me this deck can be used for anything. I can meditate with this deck. I can do like path working with it. I can do big spreads. I can do one card readings. I can read for others, for myself. I can read for, basically situations that aren't connected to me. Like, honestly, sometimes like if I see a piece of news where I'm wondering like, oh, where is this going? Like this political thing in Sweden, let's say. I use a deck to kind of dig deeper into it. Like, what does this mean and where is this going in society where I live? This is perfect for those questions. It's perfect to read intuitively, but it also has a pretty good guidebook that I sometimes open to get a little bit of inspiration. So to me, this deck, it just works always. So basically I've been using it this summer. I would say like I always use it. Just when I can't decide on a deck, this is the one I reach for, and it doesn't matter what sort of question I have. I would say, it does have a little bit of a softer side compared to the Wild Unknown, but not in a way where it sugarcoats reality. It's just not as, bam, like, it's just not as harsh as the Wild Unknown, even though it does contain like more dark imagery like this one. But it really is a deck that's very, very, very versatile in my opinion, and it's always going to be in my collection. It's also a deck that I typically don't associate with any specific season. It's good all year around for me. So I wasn't like particularly expecting it to show up this summer as a deck that I wanted to dig into more. But it did, and it's been a really good companion for when I've needed a little bit of tarot inspiration and some messages without having like a specific question in mind, or being just when I've needed some cards to sit with and almost like reflect on. Sometimes I just draw 2 or 3 cards without any specific question in mind. I just ask the divine, like, give me the messages that I need right now, please, thank you. And that's what I get. And it's usually those type of readings for me are often very calming, and I sit there, I drink my tea, I journal a little, and I may even come back to the cards like a little bit later in the day to explore them a little bit more. This deck is perfect for that. So yeah, that was the last deck on my summer list this year. A summer that has been very different for me, very slow, but very beautiful and joyful. So I hope that you've all had a really beautiful and joyful and wonderful summer as well. I'm looking forward to going into autumn now, and I'm looking forward to digging into the autumn decks, because this is my favorite season. And the decks that I associate with autumn are my favorite decks. My favorite colors and vibes and energies. So really looking forward to it now that I can actually smell and sense that autumn is right around the corner. So have a lovely day, and I will see you soon. Bye.